Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Full Metal Tuxedo. My name is Gregory. I am your host, and oh my god, I know it's been a while. I took 2 weeks off. I needed the vacation, trust me. I'd gotten pretty burnt out this year, basically since, the whole global situation started. I've been making, a video every single week on Armored Skeptic for the Tell Me More series. Sometimes it was a skeptic video. And then, of course, doing a podcast every week, sometimes two. Yeah, and then, of course, the occasional follow-up vlog on the Armored Gregory channel. And those are fun to do. Those are easy, but it's still work, So I've been just absolutely to the wall every single week for a little over a year, or just about a year now. So I needed that time off. I'm sorry it was 2 weeks. I couldn't make it just one, but I really needed to recharge. But I'm so happy to be back. A lot of changes, a lot of things are going to be a little bit different. We're starting the third season now of Tell Me More, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to keep the same schedule of doing it every Thursday, but I'm going to try to do still at least 3 a month. And, so that'll give you a decent amount of content still every month. And, oh, God, of course, I'm going to keep doing the podcast. I love doing the podcast. I love talking to you guys. I love watching the chat. I love the live streams, and remember that I live stream this, every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the Armored Gregory channel. And then when I'm done, I upload an edited version of it to the Armored Skeptic More channel. But I think that in the future, I'm just going to be doing it all on the Armored Skeptic More channel because, I love doing this on the Armored Gregory. I think I started doing this on the Armored Gregory channel to start off because I knew that I already had a bunch of fans on here, or followers, I should say. I really hate using the word fans. It's so cringe, I think, when a YouTuber calls their followers fans, because that's such a huge assumption. But, So anyways, another big change, obviously, is that I'm going to be doing this alone for a little while. Though I've got a few friends and some family members that I know have been itching to help me out on the podcast. I'll have my sister on for an episode or two, and a couple of my patrons too I've been talking to, and I know that they've been itching to participate in something like this. A couple of them even have their own podcasts in mind, so that'd be a really good first step for them. Now I have 2 Patreons now. One Patreon for the Armored Skeptic channel, and remember, I just launched a Discord server for that, and it was funny because once I launched the server, I already had somewhere around 50 people almost signed up, something like that. It was a huge number of people that were already signed up because they already had their Patreon linked to their Discord, and some of those people were actually on the old. I used to have an Armored Skeptic Discord back in the day, and I had to tank it. I know I'm sorry that upset a lot of you, but I had to do it. I had to. There was most of the people on the server were great people, but there was just this handful of toxic. There was a little bit of a toxic element on there, and I just needed to sort of give them time to cool off or just decide to leave. But, if you want to support the Armored Skeptic channel, again, go to patreon.com/Armored Skeptic. But, of course, the Full Metal Tuxedo podcast has its own Discord as well. And it has its own Patreon as well, patreon.com/Full Metal Tuxedo. And the benefits are essentially the same in both. And really, if you support one, chances are I'll give you access to the other. You don't have to support both. But, I mean, if you want to support both, that would be awesome. Some people do. Because it is different work. It's a lot of work still to do this podcast. It's a decent amount of work. and especially now that I'm doing it all on my own, you know, I've got a little bit of a workload to deal with here. But like I said, I'm going to be looking for new hosts to help me out. And I've got a lot of fun ideas for the seasons to come. So before we get into the stories here, so I live in Ontario, Canada, and our premier, which is the provincial leader of our country, or province, provincial leader of the province, he just announced an extension to the restrictions that we're going to be expecting here right after Easter, basically. A whole bunch of new restrictions were put in place, the lockdown plus a stay-at-home order. And, you know, I've already been self-isolating by myself for a year now. You know, other than, you know, special occasions like my birthday, Christmas, Easter, and that one time that my sister came over to stream video games with me, I have been completely alone in my apartment that whole time. You know, I've barely interacted with people, barely touched people. Oh, it's so sad that I've been here alone that whole time. But anyways, the point I'm making is that I find it kind of hard to believe that other people weren't already sort of doing the same thing. And granted, I'm a little bit paranoid about it because my lungs aren't great. So I have this little worry that if I were to get the little condition there, that it would not be good for me. It would be very, very bad for me. But, you know, I guess other people are willing to take the risk. And that's fine. But this, you know, this lockdown and the stay-at-home order really doesn't do much for me, doesn't really change much from my life, because I really only just go to the grocery store, and then sometimes I'll go to the conservation area for a walk, and that's about it. You know, so I am really looking forward to when I can see people again, though. Yeah, because it has been, again, it's been a little over a year now. But anyways, the new restrictions, they've also added border closures, so you can't leave Ontario and go to Manitoba or Quebec. And of course, the American border was already closed. It's been closed for over a year now, so I'm pretty well locked into Ontario here. And, which is, you know, not a huge deal, but I was actually looking forward to getting out of province pretty soon, because there's some people I want to meet, some people I want to hang out with and stuff in other provinces across Ontario or Canada. And I guess it's a little annoying because it's going to be another 6 weeks to somewhere around 2 months maybe before I can do that. But whatever, I've been waiting this long, I can wait a little longer. But the other restrictions are kind of interesting. So one of the things that Doug Ford, the premier, has done is implemented stricter powers, or stronger, bigger powers. I can't remember how they put it. It's kind of weird, but they've extended the powers of the police in Ontario to be able to stop people without cause, just to make sure that they're not breaking any rules by being out. So, you know, if you're out on a walk and you're exercising, a cop can stop you. But furthermore, if you're driving, the police can now pull you over just to make sure that you have a good reason to be out. And I know that sounds like 1984. And you're right. But so a lot of people obviously are very offended by this. And, you know, we've got the doctors on the TV saying, oh, you gotta take this seriously. You gotta take this seriously. And, you know, absolutely. I'm not knocking that. You know, we do need to take this more seriously. I want this to be over so that I can see my friends again. I can travel again. It's just, eventually it's just going to get to a point where I'm just going to say, screw this, all these restrictions or warnings or whatever the hell, and I'm just going to have to go and talk to my friends again, hang out with my friends again. But what's really interesting about the police thing is that a lot of people obviously They could read that this is not cool, that all of a sudden the police in Ontario are allowed to just, jump on you for no reason, just to double check that you've got a good reason to be out. And only just recently, within the last couple of days, several police departments, like the Ottawa Police Department, and also my local police department in Kingston, Ontario, released press statements saying, yeah, actually, we're not going to be doing that. So don't worry. Because it is a little bit ridiculous. And I guess I get it. They have to do something. Because especially in the greater Toronto area, the cases are just going out of control. We're now in our third wave, which usually these sorts of things don't go into a third wave. Usually there's a second wave and then it sort of dies down. So the fact we're in a third is a really bad sign. Also, all the variants that have come out, not so awesome. One variant in particular, the B1, I think that's the one from Brazil. Other variants don't really affect children that much. There's very few cases with children, but the B1 variant has been hitting kids, and that's bad. That's very, very, very bad. But that being said, the whole world has been locked down now for over a year. And I can't be the only one going stir crazy that's missing human interaction. And then the economy is just fucking tanking everywhere. Everywhere. All the big box stores like Walmart and all that, they're getting these special compensation dispensation to stay open. Although there's a rumor that Ontario that stores like that have been ordered to block off sections of their store that sell non-essential items. And I wasn't sure if that was serious or not until the last time I went grocery shopping, and I noticed that about a third of the store, namely the part of the store that sells like kitchenware and coolers and scented candles and seasonal items, that whole aisle was all blocked off. The beer aisle, I don't know how they get away with this. The beer aisle was blocked off. And I've seen that before, but I thought maybe it was like a store policy, but for some reason, beer, alcohol, wine is not an essential item. And I actually entirely disagree with that. And I'm not really a drinker. I'll have maybe 2 beers a week tops. And I'll even go weeks or months at a time without drinking. But sometimes you need a beer. Especially when we're in a situation like this, where it's like, what the hell else are we going to do? Let's get a little bit buzzed. We'll get through this together a little bit buzzed. But no, they're not letting us buy beer. And I'm wondering if this is like a form of torture. Like, I'm wondering though, like, what's the point of that? What is the end goal? Because the last time we had lockdown restrictions, they considered alcohol an essential item. Bottle shops were one of the things that were to remain open, but not anymore, I guess. I don't know. So anyways, that's enough ranting about how I'm tired of self-isolating. Looking forward to, human interaction again. God, just normal. I'm just going to have to invite my sister over to play video games more often, I guess. That's really, she's, right, in the last, other than, I guess, like in my immediate family, like my mother, father, and my brothers, I'll see them on special occasions and stuff, but, yeah, other than that, it's just been a year of loneliness. So, yeah, hopefully this all ends soon. Like I said, the restrictions are supposed to last for about 6 weeks to 2 months, somewhere around there. So hopefully when that's all over, things will go sort of back to the way they were. Not normal. I know they won't go back to normal, but back to the way they were before the lockdowns. I know that Ontario is not the only one suffering. But Ontario's cases are just really bad right now. Like really, really, really bad. But there's places around the world where there's less cases in the entire country than there are cases in my own hometown. and they have even stricter restrictions there than we have here, so, or at least normally. So yeah, I mean, every country is dealing with it differently. The weird thing about Canada is that they've been letting in tens of thousands of people in the last year. Like somewhere around 25 to 30,000 people have just flown into the country, and somewhere around, how many? It was, they said somewhere around 1% of them were able to bypass the quarantine law. Like, we literally have a quarantine law that you're required to stay in a hotel. And if you can't afford it, the government will, fork the bill for it, because it's that important that we quarantine for the 2 weeks or whatever after we get here. But at least 1% of people have been bypassing that. How? I don't know. But I know that that's not helping. And also the rollout for the vaccine could have been a lot better. That's actually one of the biggest criticisms the Canadian government has been receiving, is that they just dragged their feet on it. But I mean, maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, because a lot of those vaccines, actually all of them, they skipped animal testing. And they're like approved vaccines, but they're not certified. And there's a big difference. There's a lot of people are somewhere around, what is it? It's less than 1%, like 0.05% of people that have taken the vaccine also still get infected, which is, what? That's about as effective as any vaccine really is. So that's actually a pretty good number. But the other thing is the side effects. And I know my video is probably going to get restricted or demonetized or something just for mentioning that. But there are a good deal of side effects for a handful of these vaccines, one of which is the blood clotting. And that's a scary thing. And again, it's not like a huge percentage of people. It's a pretty minimal percent. But, to defend the vaccines, as somebody, who's a little bit worried about getting coronavirus, because I might not make it if I got it, to defend the vaccines, actually, I think Penn Jillette actually brought this up once on his bullshit show about the argument about vaccines. It's like, even if an extremely small percentage of people that take the vaccine end up with some sort of side effect, even if that side effect is death, which is morbid and scary, I realize, the number of people who suffer from the vaccine is exponentially lower than the number of people who suffer from getting the disease. And from what we've been seeing in the numbers is that the disease is not slowing down. It's evolving. It has at least 3 variants now that are worse than the original iteration. We have to do something to stop it from spreading. And well, I guess that brings me to that whole microchip thing. So it was announced recently in the news, if you've been paying attention, that they created a new microchip that they implant under your skin, and it's able to detect coronavirus under your skin. It's able to detect the condition in your body. Is that not crazy? And the rumor is that it can remove it from you. So that sounds awesome and scary, because I know a lot of people are a little bit worried about putting a microchip under their skin. And honestly, I don't blame them for that. And, coming from a Christian mindset, being raised Christian and sort of being in that mindset for a good deal of my life, I can't help but shake the feeling that, that sounds an awful lot like the mark of the beast, right? That's something that a lot of people bring up. But, I'm not here to convince you of that. I know that you're all a very skeptical audience, many of you atheists. So I'm not about to try to sell that idea to you, but I do find it just a little bit, not worrying. That's definitely the wrong word. But I am very curious about how that's all going to turn out, how that would be implemented. And if it got to the point where they started demanding that you have that microchip, that, I guess that's the area where I'd start to get worried. Now, like, having it as an option is really cool. Just like having the vaccines as an option is really cool. But when we get into the mandatory thing, that's when I start to get a little bit worried. But you know what? This is supposed to be a fun show. I was only going to talk about that for a couple minutes, and what? It's already been 15 minutes of talking about that. I want to talk about some current events here. So recently, NASA, who is no longer in the rocket building game, has recently just commissioned or contracted SpaceX, owned by entrepreneur genius, founder of PayPal, Elon Musk, owner of Tesla Motor Company. They've just granted them a $2.9 billion contract to send people to the moon. Now, color me skeptical, but does $3 billion not sound like enough money? I find it hard to believe that it's enough money, but maybe they're factoring in the fact that SpaceX has already sort of got a conveyor belt of rockets that they're building. But another sort of problem is that NASA, you know, doesn't have a perfect record on rockets exploding. But SpaceX's successful to failed rocket launch, and even more important, rocket landing record so far has been less than stellar. Certainly not the best in the world. In fact, dare I say, even the Russians have more successful, more reliable rockets. They've been using the Soyuz for decades now. And yes, the occasional one fails catastrophically. But again, compared to SpaceX, not nearly as many. So NASA awarded, this is Reuters here. NASA awarded billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk SpaceX company a $2.9 billion contract to build a spacecraft to bring astronauts, take astronauts to the moon as early as 2024. So we're talking 3 years from now is the earliest that they're planning on going. Which, that also sounds pretty abrupt, does it not? Like, pretty sudden. Oh yeah, we want to go to the moon in 3 years, Elon. Let's figure that out. That in and of itself is a little worrying because, as we all know, the original space mission to the moon took a decade or more to plan, to set up, and, you know, test. So 3 years, that's pretty fast. But the agency said that on Friday, that picking it over Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin and defense contractor Dynamics Incorporated. So that's actually something funny that a lot of people don't know, is that Bezos is also in the aerospace industry. And Bezos, you know, arguably one of the richest men, if not the richest men on Earth right now. He mysteriously decided that he no longer wanted to be the CEO of Amazon right after it was announced that he was one of the richest men on Earth with the most successful business on the planet. You know, the Walmart of the internet. But maybe that's a story for another time. So Bezos and Musk, the world's first and third richest people, respectively, according to Forbes, were competing to lead humankind's return to the moon for the first time since 1972. Now, I find it kind of funny, too, that this is announced that they want to go to the moon, because they've actually been saying for years that there's no point in going back. And I don't think that, unless there's something up there that they're not telling us about, there is no reason to go back to the moon. They have no reason. There's just a bunch of, it's a lot of money to send people up to something extremely dangerous, life-threatening, dare I say, to look at a bunch of rocks and dust and sip Tang through a straw. But, that's just my opinion, I guess. But they said that the whole point, even Elon Musk said this, that it's all about going to Mars. Mars is the next obvious step. There is no logical reason to go to the moon. So I don't know. I don't know the point of that. So NASA rules, Musk wrote on Twitter after the announcement. Elon Musk's Twitter is kind of a joke. He does a lot of shit posts on there. Really. I don't really use Twitter anymore, though. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm just not on there anymore. Twitter was not good for my soul. Anyways, this is not about me. The U.S. Space Agency awarded the contract for the first commercial human lander, part of its Artemis program. NASA said the lander will carry 2 American astronauts to the lunar surface. So basically just like the original missions back in the 60s, the Apollo missions. It's all about sending 2 sets of feet to the moon. We should accomplish the next landing as soon as possible, Steve Jurek said. NASA's acting administrator said during the video conference announcement, if they hit their milestone, we have a shot at 2024, he said. NASA said SpaceX's Starship includes a spacious cabin and 2 airlocks for astronauts, moonwalks, and that its architecture is intended to evolve to a fully reusable launch and landing system designed to travel to the moon, Mars, and other destinations in space. So I guess maybe that would be the reason. That's the logic behind going to the moon, first at least, is that it's a really good test for the Mars system. Because, the moon is right in our neighborhood here. If we want to test out a brand new pod that allows astronauts to get in and out of a spacecraft and then return to Earth safely, Mars is not actually the logical first place to test that. Really, the moon is. SpaceX also responded on Twitter, writing, "We are humbled to help NASA, NASA Artemis usher in a new era of human space exploration." So, Elon Musk, a few years ago, if you guys remember, the company Virgin was trying to create a commercial space travel pod. And it had a pretty catastrophic failure, and then it basically just fell out of favor and disappeared after that. But several companies in the last few decades have been talking about creating commercial space flights. So the average dummy like you and me can pay like 10 grand, it's a decent amount of money, to get up above the stratosphere, see the Earth from, well, almost from space, not really quite from space. They say it's from space, but in my opinion, you have to get a little bit further out to actually not only be in space, but to get an actual view of the planet. Like the International Space Station is fairly high up, but they can't see the whole planet from where they are. You'd think that they can, but they still get a horizon. You have to go out a pretty decent distance to actually see the entire globe. Now, I realize it's a 3-dimensional object. You can't see the whole thing at once. But I mean, to get out far enough that you're not actually just seeing a horizon, that you're actually seeing the edges of the globe. It's a pretty good distance. So unlike the Apollo landings from 1969 to 72, the only human visits to the moon's surface, NASA is gearing up for a longer-term lunar presence that is envisioned as a stepping stone to an even more ambitious plan to send astronauts to Mars. So I guess that's also a very interesting idea, is I've heard this idea too, that they want to use the moon as a launching pad for further space exploration. And that makes sense, but also, in my humble, less than expert opinion, is just adding more complication to the process of sending people to Mars and to other space bodies. Because let's be honest, one of their long-term goals is to send people to asteroids and comets and stuff to mine them. You know, mining deep space objects has been a goal of humanity for a long time, which is something I brought up in my Antarctica video. Because with all the technology and the difficulty that it will take place in mining deep space objects like that, it would actually be easier to mine Antarctica. And Admiral Richard Byrd, who headed Project High Jump, said that when he was down there, he found entire mountains of coal, for example, that would provide the entire planet with coal for many, many decades to come. And, you know, that was in the 1940s that he found it. So I think that our coal needs are a little bit different today. But the fact that we've left resources like that entirely untouched, and we're talking about going to other, you know, stellar bodies. Now, other stellar bodies are not going to have coal. Coal is, you know, a biological remnant of carbon. But there are other things down there in Antarctica. Like, it's an entire continent. There's not a single continent on the planet that does not have natural resources. So to say that Antarctica doesn't is pretty silly. And there are areas of the continent that we can probably mine. But you know what? Again, I'm less than expert opinion here. So SpaceX will require to make a test flight of the lander to the moon before humans make the journey, NASA officials told reporters. So Elon Musk is, you know, one of the richest people on the planet. He's one of the most successful businessmen on the planet. He owns SpaceX, which is one of the leaders of space in the space industry today. That's not something you want to shake a stick at. He also owns Tesla Motor Companies, which I want to do a whole podcast on Tesla someday, because I have some criticisms. Now, I've never driven a Tesla, so I can't really say anything about the quality. Well, that's not true. I know a little bit about the quality problems with the vehicles, but I mean that truck that he announced, even though the announcement kind of screwed up, that was kind of funny when he broke the windows and everything. It is very interesting. I do like the Cybertruck, and I probably would like one if I got one. But he said some things about Tesla himself, the man Tesla, that kind of irked me a little bit. He wasn't wrong, but it was sort of tone-deaf, disrespectful, and sort of misunderstood. Like, he complained, or not complained, but he criticized Tesla for not being able to earn money, to not be able to become like a capitalist leader, basically. That a lot of his inventions that he he didn't make any money off of a lot of his inventions. And that is true, that from a capitalist perspective, Tesla could have been a lot more successful. However, Tesla was altruistic, truly altruistic, more so than most people are today. He made almost every single one of his patents public. And the ones that he didn't make public were things that, well, the United States government sort of took. And there's some pretty interesting designs of his that just so happen to resemble some military technology that came out in the 80s and 90s, which can't really be that big of a coincidence. But he also had some really interesting ideas. Tesla even patented his own flying saucer, which may or may not have been made eventually someday. I don't really know. I can't say for sure. I don't know. But wouldn't that be interesting, right? So anyways, it's really it is really interesting that they want to do these moon missions now. And so NASA says a factor in the choice of SpaceX was that what's the best value to the government? NASA said in the news release that SpaceX's HLS Starship, designed to land on the moon, leans on the company's best or tested Raptor engines and flight heritage of the Falcon and Dragon vehicles. But dare I say, those vehicles are designed to be self-landing as well. And so that's where we get into the sort of curiosity of SpaceX. So, first of all, the whole self-landing thing, that was like a lot of the things that Elon Musk has sold us as new innovations. Certainly it's a modern take on the idea of a self-landing craft. But this is actually something that they figured out a long time ago. With an analog ballast system, they were able to create self-landing rockets ages ago. The only difference is with Elon Musk's designs is that obviously the computers involved are a lot more complicated and they make micro corrections. The only problem is that they'll quite often crash and explode. There was the most recent one. It landed fine, except it caught itself on fire right before it hit the ground, and there was no way to put the fire out. I don't know if anybody would be brave enough to even try. And then after it had been on the ground for somewhere around 2 minutes, it exploded. Now, Elon Musk on Twitter called that a successful landing. But dare I say, Elon Musk's definition of successful is wildly different from mine. I guess 2 minutes does give you enough time to unstrap and run the fuck away. But say you were not landing on Earth, you were landing on the moon or Mars, and that happened. Well, good luck to you, because you sure as hell are not getting back home. Am I right? So the contract was seen by Bezos and other executives as vital to Blue Origin, establishing itself as a desired partner for NASA, and also putting the venture on the road to turning profit. Well, so Bezos, like I said, is in the aerospace industry as well. And it's kind of funny that we don't really hear much about it, but he does mostly commercial stuff. And I would have found it actually kind of bizarre if they ended up with a NASA contract. Not just because we don't really know much about them and they don't talk about them, but because it's wildly outside of the scope of Blue Origin. At least Musk, with all these gimmicks that he likes to put into his innovations, as they were. At least he's thinking very future-oriented, very, like the self-landing thing is at very least practical. You know, especially if you want to design something that can take back off from the surface of, you know, a stellar body after it's landed. So Musk has outlined an ambitious agenda for SpaceX and its reusable rockets, including landing humans on Mars. But in the near term, SpaceX's main business has been launching satellites for Musk's Starlink internet venture and other satellites and space cargo. Like, well, of course, we all know the Starman. SpaceX announced on Wednesday it had raised about $1.6 billion in equity financing. That's incredible. So, that actually reminds me, so do you guys remember the whole Starman thing? I actually made a thing making fun of that. Well, sort of making fun of it in one of my Flat Earth videos. That was actually a fun thing to make. I put myself in front of a green screen and pretended that I was a passenger, that I was the Starman in the Tesla car that was launched into space. And of course, I hit the dome, because, you know, it's a Flat Earth video. I hit the dome and exploded. But anyways, what was really interesting was we got a full live feed of that rocket taking off, of the pod coming off from the car, and then plenty of footage of the planet Earth as the pod and the car floated deeper into space. Excuse me. It is a little bit harder to do this by myself. I'm not used to just talking for a full hour straight. I like to have little breaks. That's why it's good to have a co-host. Okay, so anyways, the point I'm getting at is that the very next launch that they did after that, they did a live feed of the next rocket. I can't remember which one it was. Sorry, I'm blanking right now. But the very next rocket after that, they showed a live feed of it launching into space, but as soon as it crossed the stratosphere, the live feed cut off. And everybody was a little bit upset about that. I mean, I was a little bit upset, you know, because at the time I was pretty obsessed with the flat Earth stuff. And though obviously I don't believe that the Earth is flat, I'm pretty goddamn convinced that it's round. But the flat earthers do on occasion come up with some interesting points about what we are allowed to see and not allowed to see, and what we're allowed to know and what we're not allowed to know about, you know, the Earth and, you know, its relation with space, and whether or not they're like secret islands or all that shit. And the feed cut off, they said, because there is actually literally a law stating that you are not allowed to show footage of the Earth from space without a license. You have to apply for permission to show live footage of the planet Earth from space. Now, I would love to know the reason for that. There could not possibly be a good reason for that, unless there's stuff up there, or dare I say stuff down here, that we're not allowed to see. Isn't that interesting? So, that's enough about Elon Musk for now. I'm going to read a couple super chats. And, of course, if you're a patron to the Full Metal Tuxedo podcast, on the Discord, there is a VIP section called the Live Stream Insiders Chat, where you can leave comments that instead of paying for a super chat, your patron donation counts as a month-long super chat, so you can leave comments. So if you're a patron of mine, go to the Live Stream Insider Chat, and you can write in there something, some sort of super chat you want me to read live on the air. So I know that I got a couple super chats here. Okay. The meme farmer says, beer is essential. Well, thank you very much, meme farmer. You're absolutely correct. Beer is essential. God, I don't know how we've gotten away with this, how they've gotten away with saying that alcohol is not essential, but how else are we supposed to stay sane when we're all locked in our homes? Dylan Smith, thank you for your super chat. Oh, very generous, Dylan. Says, hey, Greg, I'm in the Netherlands, and they keep extending lockdown here. They maintain it by giving us crumbs from time to time and promising to ease it, but never following through. Hang in there, man. We're all feeling it. Oh, God. That's like future promising. That's actually... That's one of the signs that you're in a narcissistic relationship, is that you keep being told that eventually in the future things will get better. You'll get that thing that you want if you just stick through a little bit longer. God, I'm so sorry to hear that. But yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thank you for the super chat, and thank you for the reassurance. Yes, we will all get through this, ladies and gentlemen, if we stick with it. Things will get better, I promise. And Ash Williams says, I wrote you an email and wonder if you've seen it and what you think. I was the one who wrote about the deja vu time travel Groundhog Day theory. Thank you. Yes, Ash, I did see that email. Usually I reply to those emails by saying thank you. I'm surprised that I forgot to send you a thank you email. But yeah, that's another thing I do on this show. It's just like in the spirit of Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM show. I like audience participation. One day we'll do call-ins, but for now the way that I do it is you email fullmetaltuxedo@gmail.com, and just like on the Art Bell show, give me a first-hand account or a second-hand account of something crazy, something supernatural, strange, weird, unexplained that's happened to you. Try not to make it too long, a couple paragraphs long, and then I'll read it. Chances are I do have a handful of them that I need to go through still, but I'm always looking for more. So send your first or second-hand account to fullmetaltuxedo@gmail.com, and chances are it will get read live on the air in the final segment of a live episode. All right. So in the Discord chat, I've got one from Tevis, and Tevis says, hey, just wanted to say you're great, and I finally made it to the stream. Great to hear it, Tevis. I know that you've actually been following for quite a while. I've seen you following for quite a while, and of course you're a patron. So goddamn, of course you're a mega fan here. So it's good to see you here. I'm glad that you're finally able to make it for the live stream. And I got... Somebody's writing one more, but you know what? It's going to have to wait to the end of the next segment. So I'm just going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to come back. This episode will probably be a little bit shorter than our average episodes. Again, doing it alone, it's a little bit harder to keep my voice going for that long. But also, I just have a... Yeah, it's like, again, I'm going to be looking for another co-host. Something that... Because I like the back and forth. I like having somebody to talk to. Because I feel like that adds a lot to the show. Oh, here we go. I always pronounce your name wrong, I know. Shakazian says, props for topping off a year of extra intense sounding Canadian lockdown and concern by premiering a season challenging demons directly. Oh yes, so thanks, bud. So that's right. So the new episode or the new season of Tell Me More on the Armored Skeptic channel is all about demons. It started off by talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren. So dare I say, do not challenge demons if they are real. Please don't do that. Let me be the dumb guinea pig that does it for you guys. Anyways, I'm going to be taking a quick break. I'll come back with a wrap-up of the alien interview, which was something that we talked about in the last two podcasts. All right, welcome back to the second part of the Full Metal Tuxedo podcast. Tonight, I guess usually this is the meat of the video, but there isn't too much more to go over, at least not too much more that I can go over without spoiling too much of the book. But I want to talk about the Alien Interview book done by Lawrence R. Spencer. In the last two podcasts, we talked a little bit about the setup to the book, the fact that Lawrence is not the author. He just compiled the book based on a group of works or I don't know what to call them, but a woman that's claimed that she worked in the Air Force, or was it the Army Air Force, in the 1940s, 1947. She was a nurse, and after the Roswell crash in New Mexico, she was tasked with interviewing and communicating with a surviving alien from the crash. And obviously, to believe this book, you have to believe the premise that the Roswell crash was a flying saucer, that there were aliens on board, and that there were survivors. All very difficult things to believe to begin with. God knows I'm a skeptic. So I go into this whole book pretty skeptically. But that being said, it is a very interesting read. And I don't know if I plugged the book enough. Though there are free versions of it, and Lawrence Spencer will, promote these free versions. He doesn't make a lot of money off of it. I do suggest that if you want the book, that it would be really cool if you paid him for it. There is, I believe, an audio version, but you can also get a digital version. Go to Amazon and find it. It's called Alien Interview by Lawrence Spencer. And it is a very interesting book. For somebody who doesn't believe, I gotta say, I was really gripped by this book. And I don't want to give away too much. So this is going to be kind of a hard episode to dance around here. But basically this alien, to recap, could only speak psychically. The alien was a synthetic being, but claimed to be controlled by the soul, a living soul, that can sort of choose to go into different bodies. And it was currently in the body of a pilot, which is why it was the pilot of the craft that crash landed in Roswell, New Mexico. Apparently there were two other beings or three other beings on the ship that all perished. That the condition of their body was pretty obviously dead. But that being said, they couldn't tell that the pilot was alive unless the pilot wanted them to know that, because there were no life signs, though there were, I think, biological components to the body that it was in. It was essentially a synthetic robotic body. Now, this is something that I've heard about gray aliens a million times, that they are a synthetic species, that they're like worker bees for different alien tasks that are needed in space. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense for deep space travel to create artificial bodies, to put people's souls into. I know it doesn't make sense literally, I just mean it makes sense practically. Because our fleshy bodies very likely would not survive a deep space mission. But to send something synthetic, artificial out into space for dozens or hundreds of years, that'll last however long it needs to last, that can handle different conditions, that doesn't need oxygen to breathe, doesn't need food to eat, that makes way more sense. Because It's hard enough for the astronauts in the International Space Station just to deal with their waste when they go to the bathroom or when they're done with, anything really. It's like, what do they do with the waste? For a deep space mission, that's like a logistical nightmare. But then also to eat, to sleep, all of that. Like, it's a lot to ask for a biological being to do that. But if you can create an artificial species, an artificial body that can do those sorts of tasks, well, then that alleviates a lot of those issues. And also, it can live for hundreds or thousands of years, hypothetically, provided that it has a power source. So, whatever this thing was, it was very old, and it claimed to have a living soul of a conscious being controlling it that was put in there. Now, sounds sort of dumb, but this is what the alien claims. So I've heard this, again, like I said, I've heard this idea that grays are artificial many times. And also, I like this idea that there's several different classes of them, because this one, that the one in the interview was the pilot, it had unique physiology compared to the other aliens. That it had 3 fingers that were very long. It had a larger head with larger eyes. And it was slightly taller, I believe, than the others. But not much taller, because I think it was still less than 4 feet tall. And it claimed to be a female. So, in the interview so far, the alien basically just described its own condition, why it was on the planet, things like that. It was sort of communicating ideas to this nurse about, its purpose there. And it was also just answering a lot of questions. So there's, hypothetically, assuming that this is true, that this alien really existed, that this alien was really here and it was really talking to this nurse. The nurse was speaking to it telepathically, and the alien was speaking to it telepathically. And there were lots of people witnessing this. And like I said, they could barely tell that this alien was even alive unless it would move. It would have to move for them to know, because otherwise it had no biosigns. So it could just be sitting there for hours doing nothing. And they'd be like, is it dead? What is it doing? They have no idea. It just looks like it's just a doll. It's just like a robot that's been turned off for all I know. And where it was getting its power source from, that's a really difficult question to answer. I think that the book goes into it a little bit, but I don't want to get into that. But apparently this robot had a self-sufficient power source. And hypothetically was able to live for hundreds of years, but for some reason died only a few years after the interviews started. Why? How? I don't know. Hypothetically, it could still be alive. It was just pretending to be dead. It could still be alive today. Or it ran out of power wherever it gets its energy from. It couldn't access that anymore. Or it chose to die. It, not so much suicide, but that it just decided to leave its body, no longer control it. But how they determined it was dead, I don't know. I have no idea, because they couldn't even tell it was alive when it was alive. So that's very confusing. But it chose this nurse for a couple reasons. One, it was the only woman in the room. She was the only one that wasn't armed. And also, this alien also claimed to be a female. So I sort of hinted at this in earlier episodes of the podcast as to my suspicion about this. So it's pretty common for ghosts, for example, to pretend to be children or pretend to be women, because you're more likely to get sympathy from people if you take a role like that. So to identify as a female when you've essentially been captured, like you've been captured by the United States Air Force, Army Air Force at the time, you're not going to want to come across as an aggressive male, because you're going to be more likely to be treated like you're an aggressive male. But if you come across as a passive female that just, I crashed my ship, I don't know what to do, it's way more likely you're going to get sympathy. And if you speak to a female, if you communicate only to a woman, women are also more likely to take sympathy on you, you know, especially in this like little 3 to 4 foot tall, weak little spindly body that was all rubbery and flexible and weak. And they said that it didn't even look like it could lift anything. Like, do you even lift, bro? This thing was so weak it looked like its fingers would break if it tried to lift a dumbbell. And this alien was very specific about the way that it communicated and how it communicated, what it communicated to these people. And I wonder if any of what this alien told them was even true at all. So there's like 3 levels of not knowing if this is true. So one, there's the you don't know if the alien is telling the truth to the woman that was in the interview. Then the second level of not knowing the truth is, and this is the problem that the brass had that were witnessing these interviews, that were conducting them through the nurse, is the nurse, they don't know if the nurse was telling the truth about what the alien was saying. It's possible the alien wasn't saying anything to the nurse at all, or that the nurse could have just been completely lying about what the alien was saying. Who knows? And of course, we don't know if this nurse, what the nurse wrote and gave to Lawrence Spencer was even genuine to begin with. No way of telling. Very difficult to tell. But then the third level of not knowing is that Lawrence Spencer, or his contact that got him in contact with this nurse, a few years ago, if the Lawrence Spencer or the contact are telling the truth that this nurse existed, because either of them could have written this and used this nurse as like a launching point for these ideas. Because though I wouldn't necessarily categorize this book as science fiction, if it were written in that way, it obviously would be a science fiction, but it's written in such a way that we're reading transcripts from interviews between this nurse and the alien. Transcripts was the word I was looking for. Thank God my brain eventually remembered it. So, and I think that from an entertainment perspective, if Lawrence Spencer did that, he pretended that he was handed all these transcripts and he just sort of compiled them for this book. I actually think that that's brilliant, because it elevates this whole book to like creepypasta level, where you can sort of immerse yourself into it in such a way that you believe that it's true. And those are the kinds of stories that I love the most. The ones that I can sort of believe. And I've been looking into aliens forever, since maybe 2011. I think that I had this really big surge of interest in them. And in 2012, I think I was pretty convinced for a little while that they were real. Then I lost that conviction. And I'm trying to play with the idea again, though I'm very skeptical that even if they do exist, about what they are. And that's something that I said in my season finale of the UFO Season 2 on Tell Me More for the Armored Skeptic channel, is that even if they do exist, if one presented themselves to me right now, like, I would accept that it was real, but I would still be very skeptical about what it is, where it's from, and what its motivation is. And that's sort of the problem that I have with this alien in the alien interview, is that it comes across as like it's a psychopath. It's essentially, even if it is a living soul in a robot body, it doesn't feel emotions. Even though it speaks with emotions, it doesn't really feel emotions. That doesn't have to be built into the physiology of the thing. It could be manipulating the nurse. It could be lying. And if this is true, if this is really true, I actually kind of find it interesting that this book isn't more popular or more well known in the UFO community. And I think that I've decided that the reason for that is because the UFO community has a very specific set of lore that they like to follow. That's another thing I talked about in the season finale of the Disclosure video. It's called Disclosure. That a lot of the ideas that the UFO community talks about come from something called the Krill Report, which was released in 1988, I believe. It was the late 80s. And the Krill Report lays out this entire story, basically. And very little that has come out in the UFO community since then has contradicted it, which I really don't like that. You know, I like that, like the scientific method, for example. When new information comes out, we say, oh, scientists just discovered we were wrong all these years about this thing. That never happens in the UFO community. There's this unwritten rule that you do not contradict things that other people have said. But this book, The Alien Interview, wildly contradicts the popular narrative of the UFO community. So I can't help but feel that that has something to do with the lack of popularity. And again, that doesn't mean that the book isn't true, that this alien interview didn't really happen. But at least what the alien was telling us doesn't really fit with what other UFOers believe. So the UFO community believes that, or at least a handful of them do, that certain information is disseminated through us psychically from deep space aliens that speak to certain channelers and psychics who like to communicate mentally through deep space communication. Now, that sounds like demons to me, dare I say. I don't know how we're supposed to trust that, because a face-to-face interaction I would trust 1,000 times more than being fed information mentally. But what am I? An expert? No. And I've never really experienced that. I've never experienced it either, so I can't really compare and contrast myself. But I gotta say, from my perspective, I would be much more inclined to consider an alien interaction genuine and sincere if they were to take the time to come and physically visit me, face to face. Because if they feel the need to communicate to me mentally from however many light years away, I can't really believe that they are what they say they are. Like, it makes it even 1,000 times harder than it would be if they showed up face to face. Why people are so willing and inclined and eager to believe these sorts of things that they're told, I don't know. I mean, obviously you shouldn't even trust these people at all that channel this stuff, because for all we know, these supposed channelers are just making it up too. I mean, that's obviously the more likely outcome, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously. But I mean, I always try to avoid making those sorts of obvious statements in these podcasts and these the videos that I make, because, you know, how short would all these videos be if I was just like, oh yeah, anyways, I think they're lying. It's like, obviously that's the most obvious answer with every single subject I cover, but, you know, that's not as fun. So the alien... The biggest wrap-up, though, is that the information that the alien gave the nurse was actually pretty interesting. So this is the part of the book that I found the most interesting, and the part that I want to give away the least about. But supposedly, and you're going to recognize this, it sounds a little bit kind of like Scientology. Maybe even a couple other belief systems that are floating around there. But the alien said that there are two major powers in the universe. One called the Dominion. And this alien says that they're a member of this Dominion, which she obviously plays off as the good guys, but, you know, she is from the Dominion, so of course she believes that. But, you know, the way that she sells it, it really does sound like they're the good guys, or at very least that they're on our side, to be more specific, and that they have our best interest in mind. And the other group is known as the Old Empire. And the Old Empire sounds very much like the Empire from Star Wars. So that was another sort of parallel I noticed, is that there was a lot of like Star Wars influence in this. Or maybe, dare I say, George Lucas knew about this, and that's what he was influenced by when he created Star Wars. I actually run on the theory that a lot of people like, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, all sorts of people that make sci-fi stuff, that they actually know stuff about reality, about the universe that we don't know, and then they sort of hide information about it in their movies. One day I want to do a video talking about the apocalypse and how every single major blockbuster movie is either about the apocalypse secretly or references it. Some more overtly than others. But some not so overtly. They're about three things. The Green Man, which is this prototypical, like, Osiris, Jesus sort of character that dies and comes back to life, that defeats this dragon or this great oppressor in the sky and then dies and comes back to life. And then the other thing is obviously the apocalypse, the end of the planet, and which is, like, I believe, a cyclical thing. But I digress, dare I say. Again, let's get back to the main subject here. Aliens. So this alien says that Earth is a prison planet. And that's not a new idea. That's something that several people have played around with for a very long time. Earth being a prison planet is a very interesting idea. So this alien says that, again, just like Scientology, that our souls, all of us, that we're stuck here. We've been stuck here for thousands or millions of years. That we're not supposed to lose our memory when we die. That when we die and come back to life, or that when we adopt a new body, we're supposed to remember certain aspects of our previous lives. That our soul is supposed to retain some level of memory. But we've been stuck here on this planet, and we've been recycled over and over again as we die. And that there's something on the moon, I think it was on the dark side of the moon, that our soul is attracted to after we die. And if we float towards it, it captures our soul. That there's this grid around the planet that captures us and won't let us leave. And then this device, or whatever the hell it is, it wipes our memory and forces us to go back and do a new life without having any memory of our previous life. And then, so we're born again. We live a whole new life, completely ignorant of our previous lives, and we just do that rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And then the reason we're prisoners here is that there's a wide variety. So obviously humanity is not totally awesome. There's a lot of beauty, a lot of love, a lot of things about it that I love. Sometimes I lose my faith in humanity, but other times that I see the beauty in people. I see these altruistic acts, these just moments of art and creation and giving and sharing and friendship that are just so beautiful. But then there's another aspect of humanity that's very evil, very selfish, does terrible things. So those terrible things are done by people, apparently, that are legitimate criminals, as in just evil people, and they've been stuck on this planet so that they can't unleash their wrath on the rest of the universe. But then the other half of those prisoners, those of us that are, I'm assuming we're supposed to identify with this group if we're reading the book, is these other prisoners are people that are either more creative or they're more independently minded. So people that just can think for themselves, that are creative, that enjoy beauty, that like to make art, music, YouTube videos. Those kinds of people are a huge threat to the empire, the old empire apparently as well, because They are very rigid, very industrial, very practical, and creative types, independent thinkers are very disruptive to that. You know, they like things to move in a very ordered way, you know, very ordered. And I got to say that I can identify with that I definitely do not help order, because I like to ask questions like, have you guys ever stopped to think for a second about why we do what we do, why we're here, who we are, what it means? And those kinds of questions disrupt the natural or the ordered flow of things. Those of us that are creative supposedly are as big a threat to the order of the old empire as those who are literally murderers or worse. And we've been stuck here so that we don't ruin that flow. Apparently, though, according to this alien, the old empire is essentially defunct. There was a group of them that was still alive under the surface of Mars, and when a group of Dominion aliens came to Earth, they alerted these old empire people who came and essentially did away with them, and they forced their souls to be stuck on this prison planet along with us. I really like the idea of the prison planet because it does make my existence feel like it makes a little bit more sense. Because I know that I definitely feel like my brain is a lot bigger than what my body is capable of doing. That, you know, my mind exists outside of the limits of what the physical world allows me to do. And I'm sure that a lot of people feel that way. And that's why I think that, like, if from an author perspective, why it's so easy to identify with that. Because nobody wants to identify with, like, a murderer. Well, I don't know that nobody does, but I know that none of you do. That's not who you'd want to identify with. Like, the book is trying to reach, or dare I say, the alien is trying to reach those of us who have that kind of conviction. But if that's by design, or if that's true, I can't say either way. But the idea is that, okay, so the idea of, like, Shangri-La in the mountains, this, like, special place where the gods resided and all this magic happened. Apparently this was the Dominion came down and established this here on Earth. And so that's another one of the things that this alien was trying to identify with, is that whole legend. The alien said that, you know, they came down to Earth and they were trying to scout it out, create this base, and hypothetically or theoretically they were going to try to free some of us. But then the old empire found out about this under the surface of Mars. They came to Earth, dispelled of these aliens, forced them all their souls to be trapped here as well. And the theory is, or the idea is, that some of us are even some of these aliens, the Dominion aliens that came down. Now, which of us are which is sort of irrelevant, I guess, ultimately. But the book is supposed to create this idea that some of us are special. Some of us are these, like, second group of aliens who came down to sort of fix everything. But, okay, here's the problem, though. This alien says, in the interview, this alien said that she believes, or her people, they can come to the planet anytime they want, as soon as they want, as fast as they want. And there's nothing here stopping them from doing that now, because the old empire is done away with, at least in this sector. They have no power here. But this alien says that they can't fix this soul recycling machine yet because they don't know how it works. So I call bullshit on that. So again, assuming that this alien is real and that this whole conversation really went down, My skeptical mind would think that this alien is either lying and that this soul recycling machine doesn't really exist, and, you know, we're not really just like, it's not by design of some evil aliens that have done this, that even if this is a condition that we're in, that this is by design and it's supposed to be this way, we're supposed to stay in this condition, or that this is just not our condition at all, and she's just trying to make us feel more special than we really are. Because apparently in our natural form, if we are free spirits that can, just like her, inhabit different bodies and live for millions of years, billions of years, or in her case trillions of years, without losing our memory, being able to switch from body to body as they all die, maintaining our memory the entire time, that in that state, in that form, we can also just choose to stay as a spirit. And as a spirit, we can create anything we want. We could create an entire universe just for us, you know? And that the reason that there is this one universe is that all these creator spirits got together and sort of decided, like, hey, there's just too many universes, too many, like, different things. Let's all decide on the best one, and we'll sort of amalgamate all of our best ideas into this one universe. And that's this universe. That's kind of a fun idea, I guess. But again, it also just sounds like the aliens blowing smoke above our ass, you know? Like, it's trying to make us feel more special than we really are. And that is, again, another manipulation tactic. This alien could just be manipulating us, or manipulating the soldiers or the officers that she was talking to. It's possible that this alien was just waiting out whatever time that they had. This alien could have just said nothing and gotten away. She could have just played dead. Or, I don't know, maybe she could have even have just left the body. But then the other side of that question, though, is like, is there even a soul or a spirit in this robot body at all? Is this, so that's the other thing, is, are these synthetic gray aliens even really alive? Because I'm not entirely convinced that they are. If they're real, of course. Because Michio Kaku, he brought up this really good point. He said that, you know, with the way that our technology is going and with how difficult it is for deep space travel, the first time that we make meaningful contact with another alien species, it will be when one of our artificially intelligent devices makes it deep enough in space to actually meet another alien device. But that alien device will also be an artificially intelligent device. So the first alien contact between Earth and another species will be between two AIs, basically. And that's how we'll learn about each other. And then even then, it'll probably be thousands of years by that time that information travels all the way back to Earth for us to hear about it. So we'll probably all be long dead by then. You know, the Earth will be so irreparably different by then. So I like the idea. I mean, I like the idea of reincarnation. And I've said in previous podcasts that I kind of think that it's real. Or at least I like to think it's real. And I guess I sort of believe in it a little bit. And I even think that what Jesus was talking about when he was talking about being born again in a new body and living eternally and all that, I think he was talking about reincarnation as well. And there's versions of, like, I know that the Gospel of Mark doesn't depict Jesus coming back again after he dies, but Matthew does, which makes me think, like, Mark is one of the first ones that was written and Matthew was one of the last ones that was written. So it makes me think that the whole idea of Jesus coming back and showing all of his apostles, like, hey, I'm still alive and I was born into a new body, just like I said, like, or I was given a new body. I think all that was added, that didn't really happen. You know, assuming that the historical Jesus went through any of the shit that he went through in the Gospels, which I think some of it is true. You know, not all of it, but some of it is true. I want to do a podcast on Jesus eventually, because, yeah. I think about again, probably because I was raised Christian or whatever, but yeah, I think about Jesus a lot. And I feel like I know him and understand him better than the average person does, and understand the Gospels better than the average person does. And I know that as an atheist, I find it actually really incredible, a soft atheist, a weak atheist. I find it kind of incredible that I know the New Testament and the Bible in general and the lore of Christianity a lot better than the average Christian does. The average Christian doesn't seem to be too invested in it. They just are at least too interested in it. But anyways, I don't really know what to take from what this alien said. You know, assuming that it's true that this alien was real and really talked to this nurse, I just can't believe that the alien was giving us the truth. The alien had no incentive to tell us the truth. The alien had every incentive to lie and blow smoke up our ass so that we would treat it better, so that we trust it more. And it seems like every single thing it did, it could be seen as like a manipulation tactic of a psychopath to get us to trust it and treat it better. That's really all I see. So yeah, let's read a couple more super chats here. We'll take one more break, and then I'm going to read a couple stories from you guys, viewer stories. So remember, if you want your story read live on the air, send it to fullmetaltuxedo@gmail.com. And just like Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, make it a first-hand or second-hand account of something strange, supernatural, unexplained that's happened to you. And the really, really good ones will get read on the air. And you know what? There are a lot of really good ones. So Tevis, thanks for the super chat, Tevis. Tevis says, I'll super chat where I want. Gonna go hang with the fam, but I'll be back to listen to the rest later. Need my weekly dose of skepticism. Peace. Thanks, Tevis. I really appreciate that. Jaximus Prime Rib asks, what the F is EDT? Because I always post what time this is going to be. I say it's usually 9 p.m. EDT on Saturday night on the Armored Gregory channel. It's Eastern Daylight Time, as opposed to Eastern Standard Time, which is what we have in the winter. So, Shaka CN, thanks for phonetically spelling your name, says, it may also be the case that post-threat evolution might incline alien beings or machines towards the feminine. On the other hand, if the nurse was able to make it up without a regular alien presence speaking to her, frankly, that sounds like a typical demon possession alien doll territory, or rather potentially angelic by the description of her philosophy. The don't have a violent intent and we will know answer had when how the military might okay, wait. So yeah, the alien, at one point, I think we mentioned this last week, that the alien said that if you don't have any violent intention towards us, we'll know that you have no violent intention towards us, and we won't be violent towards you. And Shaka CN says that I don't have a violent, or if you don't have a violent intention, that we will know answer it had when asked how the military might assure non-aggression speaks to some general good. Yeah, I agree, but that could also just be a threat. It also just sounds like a threat, honestly. So, Chronic says, Empire in Star Wars were the good guys. Rebels were evil. Well, I've actually heard that argument before. And I guess, like, that's all a matter of perspective. Because in modern iterations of the Empire, they play them off like they were just inherently evil. And they do a lot of really just unforgivably evil things. And even in the first movie, A New Hope, they blow up a whole fucking planet. I mean, that's pretty evil. The good guys wouldn't do something like that. But yeah, I guess like who the rebels are and who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, you know, that's all a matter of perspective. So yeah, if you want to save money on your super chats, because I know a lot of you guys spend a lot of money on super chats, even Tivas, who's double dipping on the money here, for a on the one of the perks for my Patreon, for the Full Metal Tuxedo Patreon, is to be able to put your super chats for free in the live stream insider super chat chat group, basically. So you'll save, a lot of you have saved a lot of money, like Jaximus Prime Rib, for example, who used to dump a lot of money into super chats. Now he has unlimited free super chats in my Discord. So go to patreon.com/fullmetaltuxedo to join the Full Metal Tuxedo Discord. I'm just going to rest my voice for a couple minutes here, and then I'll be back in a few minutes with a couple a couple listener stories, a couple stories that you guys have sent me. So I'll be right back. Hey everybody, sorry it took me a second there. Just about blew my voice out. This is, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do each of these as 3-hour shows when I'm doing them by myself, because, God, my voice just really cannot take it. And you know that my voice is my moneymaker. I can't risk it. Other than my gorgeous face, of course. So I've got a couple stories for you guys. You know, I'll mix it up a little bit because I've been talking about aliens. We'll do some, we'll do a ghost story and we'll do a Bigfoot story here. So, this one's from Ryan from Melbourne, Australia. He has another possible sleep paralysis ghost shadow people story. If you're interested, and not over these types of stories. This happened to me about a week or so ago, so very fresh. And if it was due to sleep paralysis, it would be my first experience with it. So I found that interesting. That a lot of stories that I've been hearing sound very much like sleep paralysis. A lot of stories of people, you know, experiencing these things while they're in bed, unable to move. But one of my patrons, Quintonic, recently told us a story that sounded exactly like sleep paralysis, except it was missing the specific important element of him not being able to move, because the story would always include him moving and sometimes even running to his light to turn it off. So I don't know if you've emailed that story to me yet, Quintonic, but I hope that you do so that I can talk about it on the air here. So Ryan goes on to say, I live alone, and one night I woke up probably about 3 or 4 in the morning and felt immense dread, like all the hair on my body was standing up. Ooh, that's a creepy way to wake up. I then heard footsteps walking towards my bed. I then felt the sensation of someone sitting on the other side of the bed behind where my back was turned, away from the door. You know the feeling of the mattress moving when someone pulls their weight on by sitting down? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have a lot of experience with that. I've heard a lot of people talk about stories like that where they could feel something in their bed. But I don't know. I see a lot of shadow figures, and the other night I had I have this one shadow figure that's like the size of a cat. And I see this one a lot. And the reason I say it's the size of a cat is because I often mistake it for my cat. In fact, I have been mistaking it for cats of mine for decades now. There was this one that I used to see when I was a kid that would run down the stairs and right, because my bedroom had a view of the basement stairs. I was in the basement. And it would, because I had a cat that would sleep in a closet down there, and it would make this very specific movement, run down the stairs, do a quick 180-degree turn, and run across my door up towards that closet. And well after my cat died, I would still see a shadow make that exact movement several times. And actually just the other day, I saw what I thought was my cat run into my bathroom. And then when I called my cat, she came out from a different room, which freaked the hell out of me. Anyways, just, I think it was 2 nights ago, I saw a shadow jump right over my chest while I was laying in bed. Jumped right over my chest. And it, from the corner of my eye, it would have looked like it landed to the right of me. And right around the time that it should have landed, I felt my mattress jiggle, and I heard the squeak of one of the springs in my mattress. But when I looked, my cat wasn't there. And again, she was in a different room. So that was so freaky. Anyways, Ryan continues. I didn't want to move and kept my eyes closed, but couldn't move my fingers or my toes, but stayed still and frozen in complete fear. I was waiting for a word or whoever the person was to hit or grab me, but there was not any movement. Just the feeling of an imprint, someone sitting on the bed. That's really creepy. After about what felt like an hour, but probably 10 or 15 minutes, I felt the sensation of the mattress moving again, like whoever was there was standing up. And I heard footsteps leaving my bedroom and moving up my hallway. The nerves and fear left me as soon as the footsteps left my bedroom, but could still hear them in the hallway. So that's really creepy. As somebody who lives alone and has basically been completely alone for a little over a year now, that is the freakiest thing. Because feeling like there's somebody in there that's not supposed to be in there, and knowing that you're alone and there's nobody that can nobody that can help you if there is like a problem, that's freaky. So Ryan continues, when I could barely hear the footsteps, I got up, picked up a can of deodorant as a weapon. It was the only thing I had in my side table. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. I don't blame you. I don't blame you, Ryan. I probably would grab just the closest thing to me too. And looked through my entire house, turning every light on and looking in every closet, cupboard, and anywhere someone could hide. However was in the house. Sorry. However, I was in the house alone. That night, I was the most scared I'd ever been and left every light on the next couple of nights but barely slept. I am just getting back to feeling safe again and sleeping again. Well, I don't blame you. God, that would be so fucking freaky. But that is a classic shadow person story, a sleep paralysis story, is that, I mean, sometimes they'll sit on your chest so you can't breathe. So at least you were able to, like, breathe, you know? But it's funny that you mentioned this detail that you didn't want to move, but then when you tried to move, you couldn't. And you see that as being paralyzed with fear. And maybe that's what it is, because you did wake up in a state of fear. But it's interesting that even when you tried to move, you couldn't. So that's classic sleep paralysis, is that your brain and your body, well, what the scientists, the doctors say, is that your brain is awake, but your body's not. So you try to consciously move your body, but you can't because you're not out of REM yet. Anyways, Ryan says, probably a story that you're sick of getting, but not probably usable on the show. But no, I love the story. That's so perfect. Really. So thanks for your time for reading. Kind regards, Ryan. That was an awesome story, Ryan. Honestly, don't put yourself down. I'm not even going to read what you wrote there about it not being good enough. Because that is such a perfect story for this show. I love stories like that. Yeah, I mean, I was actually just talking about similar things happening in my family. Several members of my family have witnessed shadow people and had similar like nighttime visits from shadow people. And it's actually kind of a thing that's, I don't want to say has plagued my family, but I know that it's something that bothers a couple of us. I've gotten to the point though where I'm used to the shadow figures, whatever the hell they are. The most common thing that'll happen to me is I'll see a head. I'll see like a movement out of the corner of my eye, and when I go to look, I'll very clearly see the outline of a head, a black head, like a dark head, like peeking at me from around the corner, and it will dart behind the corner so I can't see it. And then when I get up to look, obviously there's nothing there. But I've straight up seen full apparitions just in my hallway. And again, as soon as I lay eyes on them, they don't disappear. That's the creepiest thing about the shadow people, because I've had ghost encounters where I've seen what I think is a ghost and it just disappears right in front of my vision. But the shadow people don't do that. They dart away. They like run away. They hide in another space, and then when you go into that space to find them, they're gone. It's so drastically different. And maybe it's because it's a different part of our brain. Like maybe a ghost is just like a visual mistake that our brain thinks we see something, and then when we try to focus on it, it disappears because our brain realizes that there's nothing really there. But perhaps with shadow people, the reason that we see them move is because it's a different part of our brain that's being activated there. It's not a visual thing, it's more of a mental thing, that our brain is putting something there that it thinks should be there or might be there. And then it shows it moving and disappearing because that's the only way that our brain can reason how it disappeared. Like it's like a logic center thing. But I don't know. That's just one idea. So you can call me Charles. These happenings took place over a month ago, but it all started on one night in the summer. My brother and I were awake and talking to each other about 2 a.m. when we both heard the back door of our home opening up downstairs. We looked at each other and stopped talking, listening. Something was walking around downstairs. Eventually, we decided to investigate, so we walked down the stairs, still hearing the moving somewhere as we approached. I didn't see it that night, but we heard it leave before we got to the kitchen where it was walking. My brother and I stayed up and kept watch until the morning. At that time, we thought it was a person. Right, and that's the logical thing to think, right? Is that it was a human being that had invaded your home and just waltzed around. You know, just a home invader. No big deal. God, even that would be so fucking freaky. I've always had trouble sleeping at night, so I would very often be awake at ungodly hours. Yeah, same, bud. Same. When the noises around me seemed just a bit stranger. Yeah, and I think that's that's an instinct thing. Because some people are wired to be at their most defensive at night. And that's because, you know, not only would the predators come out at night, but there was always a tradition in you know, human civilization that there would be people that would stay up at night to guard and protect the village. And some of us just have that disposition where we can't sleep at night because we want to be on guard. Yeah, so it was one of these nights that I went down to the kitchen at about 2 a.m. to get some food, and I felt an overwhelming sensation of fear seemingly coming to me from the door to outside. I couldn't bring myself to look at the door and could hardly move at all. So that's interesting. So this is a really interesting thing that I say this in every podcast, every episode, so I guess this is my obligatory time of saying it. But things like ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, stuff like that, I think are all related phenomenon. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that our fight or flight response seems to get triggered even before we know those things are around. That there's something about, just like the last story about the man, something sitting down on the guy's bed. The guy woke up to the feeling of fear before he even knew that there was something to be afraid of. And it's just simply the presence of these beings makes the hair stand up on end on our body. And it's like, that's either evolutionary or that could, maybe it's a sign of them feeding off of our emotions. Because I think that that's what at least shadow people do, is that they feed off of our emotions. So yeah, he said they went down to look at the door, but he could hardly move at all. I slowly lowered myself to the ground and had to crawl out of the kitchen before the fear subsided. This happened a few times, well over 10. That's incredible. But eventually, I worked up the courage to look at the door, which had a small window at it, at the top. I saw something dark, like a dark gray color, with 2 white eyes looking at me. It was extremely tall, taller than me. I'm about 6'3". Yeah, I'm about 6'3", 6'4". So if something, you know, as somebody that's about 6'3" as well, if something that was exponentially taller than me came along, it would be horrendously intimidating. I'd often hear it walk up to the door, but that was the only time I ever actually saw it. That's incredible. I'm so glad that you actually built up the courage to look, though, because I don't know that I could. Another time, I was in my room on the second level of the house, which had 2 windows facing the same way as the back door. And at around 1 a.m., a gray hand smacked the window. The creature was not tall enough to reach the window. It was maybe 7 feet tall at most. So I'm unsure if the hand was the same creature that stood outside the door. It all eventually stopped after I hung a tapestry of the goddess Kali in the window. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it stopping, but that's what sticks out in my mind as the stopping point. Thanks for reading. It feels good to be able to put out somewhere that my best, Charles. Well, that was a great story, Charles. That was actually one of the best Bigfoot stories I've ever read in my life. I love that detail, that extra detail of one day you saw a big gray hand smack the window. That's really freaky. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? Because we got a little bit of time here, I'm going to do one more. So I'll keep this short. When it comes to my religious born again story, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, first occasion was when I was 10 years old, and I saw a duende spirit with 4 other people in the same room. My family was celebrating an occasion, and we was in Jersey. I live in a different state, so my family stayed over because of drinking. So as the party came to an end, my cousin was sleeping in an air mattress, and I was I was awakened by a tap on the head from my mother and uncle. Then my aunt came in as well, quiet, and we saw a 2-foot figure that was translucent and dark over her head, staring while she sleeps. We might have been in shock for a minute. I crawled away, and then my uncle turned on the lights and and it did not dissipate. Sorry, the story doesn't have any punctuation in it at all. So my dyslexic ass is having a little bit of trouble here. It did not dissipate, only until he tried to reach for her, the spirit, fairy, evil in nature, but consider to me more of a trickster, and create anxiety and sadness and feed off of the positive energy from children. In most cases, once he reached he evaporated like water, boiling in a pot, and disappeared. Next day, she was baptized, and it did not happen again. The second story I'll send another day. Well, that was so freaky. That was so freaky. So here we go. One more. So this one's a little bit different. Sounds like a religious thing. So I know I don't really like to sell religion, but since I've opened up the lines to you people, Art Bell would often get people trying to sell religion. So you know what? I would be a huge hypocrite if I didn't allow the same thing on my show, because I'm trying to say here that I'm doing the same thing as Art Bell. So this is Sean has a born-again experience here. I'm a simple man who draws furry erotica for a living. Wow, I really did not expect the story to start off like that. I've never had an experience that I'd consider supernatural. But if aliens or ghosts or whatever have you, okay, that's fine. But while I'm not scientifically educated, I think of myself as being science-minded. Well, there's your average atheist, isn't it? But I also acknowledge what Dennis Reynolds called the God hole in my life. I've typically tried to fill it with science fiction that deals with religious topics. Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Man from Earth, and my favorite film, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Oh, that is a good film. So based on past experience this year, I decided to take some edibles and watch 2001. Well, I hope you did that in a place that's legal to do that. It is legal to do that here in Canada. First time I'd done both at once. I drank some milk and put the movie on and left it open to any experience. At around the boardroom meeting scene on the moon, I started seeing the movie in a new light. The best way I could describe it, imagine it as an ant sees a nature documentary about ants and attempts to convey this information to other ants. Obviously, since ants have no concept of a nature documentary, they'd have to convey it through means familiar to them. 2001 felt like this to me, like a human had glimpsed at a higher form of life describing humanity, and now a human was attempting to convey this back to other humans. That's a really interesting idea. Well, when it comes to Stanley Kubrick in general, the man was not only a genius, but he would hide a lot of esoteric information in his movies. And a lot of people also suggest that he would also try to drop some truths about things he knew, things that he was a part of. Some people will say that the moon landing was actually filmed in a studio with Stanley Kubrick, and that in The Shining, there are hints to this. I could do a whole episode on that. Though people of all the conspiracy theories and stuff that I talk about, I've noticed that the moon landing one is actually a really touchy subject, because a lot of people are very emotionally invested on the moon landing. And people get really offended when you even suggest the possibility that it didn't actually happen, or that it didn't happen the way that we're told, or at least what we saw was not the real event. So yeah, but that'll definitely come up in an upcoming podcast. So, Sean here continues, this experience also gave me, for lack of a better term, an overwhelming fractal feeling. I felt like I was as much a part of the larger universe as the mitochondria in each of the cells that are part of me. That's interesting. I had more complex feelings than that, but I feel like that could fill a book. Interesting. So I'll keep it brief. It definitely opened my mind to the vast unknown and unknowable nature of the universe. Sorry if this got a little bit trippy, but you've got a furry stoner in your audience, so this is pretty par for the course. Love the show. Really enjoying the new direction of Armored Skeptic brand, and really hope to see Tinfoil Helmet Revisited. Oh, well, good news for you. I do have another episode of Tinfoil Helmet planned. In fact, I'm going to be starting to get more into the Tinfoil Helmet series. So I hope that, at very least, if you guys found that story a bit weird, that news that I just gave you at the end makes up for it. Thank you so much for the story, Sean. That's a really interesting perspective. So I'm going to see if I have any more super chats here. Asgaror Hammer, that's a very generous donation. Thank you so much. Says, sorry for the low donation. My national coin worth nothing. Yeah, I had a funny feeling that number was a little bit high. Also, would you consider an episode about dreams? I haven't had a paranormal experience per se, but I have the wildest dreams that entangled themselves with reality. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do an episode on dreams and visions and things like that, because not that my dreams per se are really that interesting, but like my daydreams and the visions that I have sometimes play out in reality after I've had them. So I mean, that's very interesting. So going back to the Patreon Discord here. Again, if you want to become a patron, you can put your super chats in the live stream insider chat. So Chronic says, my mom always says that we're made of stardust whenever I bash on astrology or whatever. All I think of is the Stardust Crusaders, because I'm a dummy. Most Christians don't even know the actual Bible. As a theology nut who knows all the stuff, I feel like most people I know have no idea what I'm talking about. So then he goes on to talk about, to follow up on his idea about the Death Star. He says, they blew up a planet of traitors. Well, see, not every single citizen that lived on that planet was a traitor. Only the leadership of that planet were traitors, you know? Anybody that's a good leader knows that you don't just kill an entire civilian population because the leaders of the said population did something you don't like. You know, that kind of practice was supposed to have ended at the end of World War II, though. Let's be honest, it didn't really. And then Sir Hamilton completed that thought by saying about the Stardust, she's right, even Carl Sagan said we're made of star stuff. So if you've never heard about that before, we are essentially made of destroyed stars, every single particle in our body, because stars are where elements are created, you know? So if we've got a hydrogen star, which is like one proton, one neutron, one electron, or whatever hydrogen's made of, when that's put into a crucible of a star and compressed with nuclear fusion, it then gets compressed into helium with 2 protons and 2 electrons. And then an older star will then take that helium and compress it into 3, which I believe is carbon, right? I'm sorry, I failed chemistry. That was the only subject I ever failed. But yeah, then compresses it into carbon, and then the older the star gets, the more elements you get out of it. And then of course when it supernovas, it then creates an even bigger plethora of those particles, which then gets spread out into the atmosphere, out into the universe, and each of those end up forming into planets and stuff until a new star forms. So that's what it means when it says that we're made out of star stuff. Yeah, so Desert Storm says, I think I had a mild case of sleep paralysis. I would like to have your opinion on it. I was dreaming about something, I don't remember what, but probably a nightmare. I tried to wake up and was not able to for a couple of minutes. That's interesting. I've never had that problem where I knew I was asleep and I couldn't wake up, because I have the opposite problem, that once I become aware that I'm dreaming, it's actually very hard for me to stay dreaming, and I almost always wake up as soon as I become aware of it. When I was able to get up, I didn't feel or see anything strange, except that I was too scared to sleep for the rest of the night. I'm really not sure if it was sleep paralysis. I'm really interested in everything paranormal, but I try to keep a skeptical mindset. The rational explanation would probably be just that it was a bad dream. Maybe. But I mean, that does almost sound like sleep paralysis, because sleep paralysis almost always comes with this dread, this fear. And it doesn't always necessarily have to come with a presence, just the feeling that there was a presence, or there's a feeling that there's something to be afraid of. Because just like the person, I think it was Ryan, was it? His story about sleep paralysis, he was saying that, he woke up with the sense of fear before he even knew that there was something to be afraid of. So, that, I mean, maybe that would follow under the sleep paralysis umbrella. So, and then Devil David says, I'm quite sure there was a fake moon landing shot, just in case the mission would fail. They actually made it to the moon, so the footage was never used. Though that's where the evidence of the fake moon landing comes. Well, maybe, David. The other possibility, though, is that the Van Allen belt that surrounds our planet is heavily, it's heavily radioactive. And a lot of people were arguing that any kind of film, photography, or video film would not have survived traveling through that Van Allen belt. So some of those photos that we see could have been faked, because, those photos would have just been absolutely pockmarked with essentially photons just traveling through them like they weren't even there. And a lot of the footage that we got, it was like live footage from the moon that was being streamed to the Earth. I think that the possibility is, there's a possibility to, I guess I'll talk about this in the moon episode, there's a possibility that they faked the footage even though they actually really went, just because they were worried that something would go wrong. So while they were up there, they weren't actually showing what was really going on, because they wanted to show an idealized version of it, just in case some of the astronauts didn't make it back, or just in case something went wrong, or maybe there was something up there that they didn't want us to see. I'm not entirely sure. All right. Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight. I hope that this wasn't too weird of an episode. It's the first one that I've done entirely on my own. So I know that there was a little bit more dead air than usual. I apologize for that. My voice is just about busted, though. So I gotta go. I'll see you guys next week, though. Back to the regular schedule every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the Armoured Gregory YouTube channel is when I live stream it. And then when I'm done, I'll upload a edited version of it to the Armored Skeptic More channel, along with all the other episodes of the podcast. I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, I'll have a brand new episode of Tell Me More up by then. And until then, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight, guys. I really enjoyed the company. And I will see you later. Love you guys. Good night. Have a good weekend.